So yesterday here in Texas, it was 82 degrees in the afternoon. It was so nice that my kindergarten class, we went outside and walked to the park and we had a picnic at lunch. And it was so warm that some of the kids complained that they wanted to stay inside because it was too hot. Today, I woke up and we're back in the high 30s, low 40s, and there's an Arctic wind blowing out there that I can tie all things into Zappa. That reminds me of the opening to Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, only it's not as musical nor as fun. Yeah, so back to winter for a day. I think tomorrow we're back in the 80s. I don't know. Who knows? Anyways, let's talk about this Zappa tour. Hello, people. Thanks for watching. My name is Shaggy, the opinionated hippie. Currently ranking and reviewing all 26 Frank Zappa tours on this channel. Not the tours on this channel. I'm ranking and reviewing them on this channel. 26 that I have deemed to be tours. I've not yet done anything from the 60s, but I've collapsed all of the 60s into one tour. So there's a lot of things you can immediately have problems with. But as I have determined the 26, we are now on number 12. And that is Fall 78, which is, let me just be clear. Everything from 15 on is like almost perfect and is great. And on any given day will make me really, really happy to listen to. 15 after that, 16 through 26, I have some complaints about. But 15 on, they're all almost perfect. And I'm really just looking for really, really, really minor things to like, which one can I put at 12 and I'm not going to feel that bad about? Because they're all fantastic. And this tour is also ridiculously fantastic. And this tour also contains probably the best 6-show run Frank ever did, the Halloween 78 run, which we are probably one day going to see the release of. We've already had Halloween 73, we've had Halloween 77, we have Halloween 81, and this is the best of the Halloween runs. So, and Halloween 77 was my number 2 all-time Zappa Family Trust ranked release. So, if Halloween 78 gets released, yeah, we have a new number 2. Everything else slides down. I don't think number 1 is going to change. That's on this channel also. I'm not going to tell you what it was. Just, I don't get monetized, but just go watch that anyways. Okay, I'm rambling because it's early on a Saturday morning and it's freezing cold. But anyways, this is a great tour. Fantastic tour. On a previous video, I mentioned that out of Frank Zappa's guitar playing, I think there are 4 tours that clearly rank above all other tours as being sort of the peak era for his solos. And I think giving credit to Wackerman and Tunis and Caliuta and Barrow, drums and bass players respectively, on these tours because they helped create sort of the environment, you know, in which Frank solos, and they need credit for that. So I would say the top 4 tours, clearly to my ears, I've already done 3 of them. Number 3 would have been Fall 1981. Number 1, clearly to my ears, is the 1979 tour. And then this would be number 4, Fall 78. Number 2, I have yet to review, but you can probably figure it out if you. It's of the same era. So this would probably be my 4th favorite. I think this is by far the most aggressive of them all. 82 is also very, very aggressive, but in a different way. I compared in the last video to 81 and 82 are like a velociraptor energy, sleeker, you know, quicker, more, it seems like more lethal in an efficient sense, while still going very, very out there. Where 78 and 79 are, especially 78, a lot more aggressive, a lot more just tear up the landscape. Caliuta is a beast on drums. And 78, I think, has some of the most aggressive energy Frank has ever had in like the best way possible. Also, when I started getting into trading tapes, and I started becoming obsessed, and I eventually wrote web pages about them. I used the term monster songs to refer to certain songs that sort of have the ability to go anywhere. Like once it starts, you like there are most of the songs Frank plays, like you know what's going to happen over the course of the song. But there are songs that once they start, there is the potential that something really, really, really crazy is going to happen. And I'm going to sneeze, so I'm going to try to do this, even though there's a lot of allergens that are apparently have been blown in. But there are certain songs that just have the potential to go anywhere. And it was really this tour specifically where, like, I think that is almost fully realized in the best way possible. Pound for a Brown on the Bus and Little House I Used to Live In being the main vehicles in which, like, we go crazy places. And a perfect example of that is on the officially released ZFT release, Chicago 78. That Little House I Used to Live In into paroxysmal splendor is a perfect example of sort of the chaos that could ensue on this, the musical chaos, the best kind of chaos that could ensue. In Little House I Used to Live In Pound for a Brown, in Suicide Chump at one point, in Conehead. This tour really seemed to kick open the doors with Frank just being like, let's just do whatever we want. You do something. Now you do something. Now you and I are going to do something. And it just really, I think this is the tour where I clearly saw that and then sort of just started to looking for that in other tours. But really, this has some of just the best monster performances ever. And so that's another reason why this is high up. But why would this be number 12 then, since you're praising the guitar playing and the monsters? It's just because there are a set of songs that are essentially played every night. There's a repetition of set list problem. And it's not necessarily the repetition of the set list, because there are 2 tours I've yet to do that almost had the exact same set list every night, and they're further up, closer to number 1. But those songs I like better than I like these songs. And plus, I think some of the versions of these songs are kind of rough. And Vinny Colaiuta, the drummer, who is probably technically and just probably Frank's most boundary-pushing, outlandish, skilled, crazy drummer, it seems like when they get to just the rock songs, he has a really heavy hand that kind of drives the vamps or the grooves, like just into the ground in a way that, like, Frank's solos have to then rise above, and the bass player has to, like, not get drugged down with him and turn it into like a straight up like doom jam, which if it was a straight up doom jam, I think I'd be much happier with it, like a doom metal jam. But it just seems to weigh down some of the songs. Easy Meat, City of Tiny Lights, Bamboozled by Love. When I reviewed these shows like decades ago, I reviewed them with a bunch of people, and one of the members of our little clique of reviewers, Sean Gaffney, called these the Fall 78 death vamps, because they really are just these plotting things. And it just didn't seem like Vinny seemed to, like, hit them harder into the ground, like he was like a sledgehammer pounding these things, and that's not what they needed. They needed a little more buoyancy. And when Frank eventually abandoned these vamps in later tours, these songs got better. So anyways, those are my minor complaints. Repetition of set lists, not the best versions of songs, and not every show was fantastic. Some shows were like couple solos, no real monster jams. And so at this point on this list, not being consistent night after night after night is going to knock you down out of the top 10. And having songs I don't like, it's going to knock you out of the top 10. This is my list of favorite tours. This is not a objective list. This is a completely 100% subjective list. So anyways, who is in this band? FC, of course, Frank Zappa on guitar and vocals. Ike Willis up through October 14th. This was August 26th through Halloween. Ike left, I think his last show was October 14th. He left for personal reasons. Guitar and vocals. When he left, they dropped Village of the Sun from the set list, and that is probably one of the highlights of this tour. You can hear that on Chicago 78. It is just kind of a slower, more laid-back version, a very nice pace. Had a really good Frank guitar solo at the end, sometimes a keyboard solo. I think there were keyboard solos sometimes at the end of the song. Just really fantastic. Yeah, just really fantastic. And unfortunately, when Ike left, they dropped it, which is good, because I'm glad he didn't give the lyrics, the vocals over to Denny Wally, because that would have given this song the wrong vibe. Denny Wally is also in this band, who I just mentioned. Excellent slide guitar, vocals. The Meek Shall Inherit Nothing debuts on this tour, and Denny's just slide guitar on that is just fantastic. Gives that song has a feel that not a lot of Frank songs do, and I think on this tour it works better than on any other tour. And I think by the time it joined that You Are What You Is Sweet, it lost some of its magic. Arthur Barrow on bass. This is his first tour. Vinnie Colaiuta on drums. This is his first tour, also on seal calls. Ed Mann is still around on percussion and now taking over the Bob Dylan impersonation and flakes. Tommy Mars and Peter Wolf still on keyboards. And then on October 13th, Patrick O'Hearn would join the band, and there would be 2 bass players. So Arthur Barrow is still there, but now they have a double bass presence. And then El Shankar plays the Halloween shows, and then he also pops up in like a September show, I think it is. September show earlier in the tour, providing just some amazing stuff. And then Warren Cucurullo tells a story on Halloween, and then some other girl gets pulled from the audience to tell the story on all the Halloween shows. So anyways, yeah, it was a little European leg, and then most of this were from U.S. shows. I'm going to sneeze and blow my nose one more time. Sorry, pause. So where can you hear this band so you get a good sense of what they bring, which is some pretty amazing stuff. So there were 2 releases that only document this band. Chicago 78, which is a complete show from late September of this tour. I would say not even in the top 5 of shows from this tour. And yet, I ranked it my number 5 on my all-time ZFT post-Zappa 93 release schedule. 55 releases, it was number 5. I would say it's not in the top 5 of shows from this tour, which is, one, how strong this tour is. Chicago 78 is still an amazing release, and yet for me, how great the rest of these tours are. And there was a release, which I think it's still available on the Zappa.com, Halloween. It's just called Halloween. It is a single CD release, a like DVD-A, I think is what it is. So you can't just listen to it on a regular CD player, I don't think. It's got a video component. And so it's a bunch of songs from the run. And then there's a couple videos, a video performance of Suicide Chump and one of Dance and Fool. So that's the only 2 like CDs where you can hear this band. But then on the You Can't Do That on Stage series, 13, the Pound for a Brown solos on Volume 4, 13 on Volume 6, Little Rubber Girl, Lobster Girl, The Eye of Ben and You, the instrumental Take Your Clothes Off When You Dance. Those are all from the Halloween run. The dance contest on Tinseltown Rebellion is from Halloween. There are 2 Beat the Boots, which document this tour. In Beat the Boots Volume 1, the Saarbrücken show. It's not the complete show, and there's some... I haven't listened to that in a long time, but I think there's a couple rough cuts on there, where people were flipping tapes and you lost some music, if I'm not mistaken. At the Circus on Beat the Boots 2. There was a version of Moe's Vacation on the Zappa original movie soundtrack that just came out like a year and a half ago, or just over a year ago. There is a really good video, which I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube, We Don't Mess Around, of like a TV performance they did very, very, very early in the tour during the European leg. That's out there. And then they released a single called Ancient Armaments. Armaments? Ancient Armaments. Why does that word sound weird? Ancient Armaments, that is on the Halloween release. I think it's the opening track on the Halloween release, and it was released as a single, and it's the opening guitar solo from the Halloween run, if I'm not mistaken, the actual Halloween show. So yeah, they're pretty well represented out there, but like I said, we need more, because the Halloween run might be the best run of 6 shows ever. And then there are also some just absolutely amazing shows. Anything from like early October, as you get closer to Halloween in this tour, the shows just get better and better and better and better. And almost every October show is just like has a moment where you're just like, oh shoot, this needs to be released, or everybody needs to hear this, or this is just amazing. There's just so many incredible, almost monster song moments in every show in October, where things really go places you're not expecting them to go, where Frank's solo is just pushing a boundary in a way Frank has not pushed a boundary in, ever so far, or very rarely does, and he's doing it consistently night after night. So it's an amazing, amazing, amazing tour. But there are songs I don't like. So this is your typical set list. from this tour, which will give you a sense of what you're seeing. And keep in mind, and I think one of the most interesting things about this is with most Frank tours, but again, with this one also, most of these songs have not been released. Like, people are hearing these songs for the very first time. You know, they don't have albums. They're not recognizing these songs and cheering. And so it's really interesting that Frank almost immediately just like hits the audience over the head with this really aggressive, heavy energy that they've never heard before, which I just, to be there and to experience that in real time, that would just be amazing. But anyways, your typical show was they would come out and open. Early on, there was like a Purple Lagoon opening, and then eventually Frank would just play a guitar solo in the beginning. Some pretty good guitar solos over like different vamps. Sometimes different songs. So this is where he started that just regular sort of like opening the show with a guitar solo. That's kind of, this is the era where that really came to like fruition and became a part of what Frank's set lists were. Then after the guitar solo opening, you would get Dancing Fool. Don't Like It as an opener. Vinny attacks this song in a way that's just crazy. Easy Meat. This was its first time being played after being played a handful of times in the Flo and Eddie era back in 1970. It's that just a da-na-na-na-na-na for the entire duration of the song. Really aggressive solos that just kind of don't go anywhere most of the time. They're good, they're fun to hear, but on a night-to-night basis, not sure there's much variation in them. Honey, Don't You Want a Man Like Me, a song I don't ever need to hear again. Keep It Greasy, another song I'm not really a big fan of. The Meek Shall Inherit Nothing, which after that run of songs sounds pretty amazing, provides a really nice contrast to the energy, even though it's still calmly aggressive because of Denny's slide, but a really good placement. And then from here, things would kind of, Frank would kind of go different directions night to night, but this is typical of some of the stuff he would play. Typically, sometimes you get a City of Tiny Lights into a Pound for a Brown on the bus, the Pound for Brown having some absolutely amazing sort of monster improvisational performances. Sometimes you get a Bamboozled by Love in here. Cyborg got thrown in here sometimes. A Little House I Used to Live In, which would contain like keyboard solos and then sometimes some pretty crazy improvisation. And then just kind of, this is the area of the show, like you get about 45 minutes that were standard, then you get another maybe 30 to 45 where Frank would kind of vary it night to night. And then you would usually end, I think every show ended, at least the main set ended with the Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, the entire suite, like 15 plus minutes of that. And then you'd get your encores. You got a whole mix of standard encores. Strictly Gentile started to be played for the first time on this tour, which is a great, reintroducing that song to the live experience. There were some Yo Mamas in there, a whole bunch of other different stuff thrown in there, which I'll kind of go over. But really, as a tour, if you're going to listen to show after show after show, that first chunk of songs, I think, like, I am someone who would skip and just go right to like the City of Tiny Lights, which again was also kind of plotting at this point. Just that same vamp over and over again. But still, that's a great song. From there on, and skip that first part, which is another reason why I had to push this down to 12. Frank's solos are ridiculous on this tour. I just other than just sort of the repetitiveness or sort of the not going anywhere and doing it aggressively sense of like Easy Meat and City of Tiny Lights and even Bamboozled My Love. Other than that sort of minor complaint, the solos are consistently great. The new songs on this tour, this is another reason why this is knocked down to number 12. Bamboozled by Love makes its full debut. The lyrics had been quoted in an earlier tour, but this is the first time you get that full song. Same with Suicide Chump. You get that song for the first time. 2 additions to his live repertoire I am not a big fan of, but I have something to say about that. Bamboozled by Love specifically. Let me go through this first. You get the lyric version of Rollo for the very first time with Tommy Mars singing those lyrics, which once you hear, Rollo will never sound the same again. You get the debut of Packard Goose on this tour. You had the lyrics referenced on a previous tour, but now you get the full song. And that went through a lot of different changes, the number of times it was performed. You had some additional lyrics on here, which never made the cut. They go to the party just to chew on the cheese, and they act like they all have some great expertise. Great rhyme. They tell you that rock and roll is dead. Oh, spare me, please. So you get that. Where the solos happened kind of changed over the course of the tour. After the music is the best line, Frank would say, however denied, wherever it's tried, however is never forever. That would then be dropped. That would be dropped before it reached the studio, the officially released version. So yeah, it kind of was changing in real time, and you could like go, if you were to listen to the versions, you would see how it changed. So that's kind of neat that Frank was still tinkering with this, from show to show. Which imagine being in the band, you're like, hey, that song we played 4 shows ago, playing it tonight, but now we're adding this part. So yeah, that's the fun of being in a Frank band. So what was I talking about? Oh yeah, new songs. So that gets debuted on this tour. Moe's Vacation makes its debut on this tour. The Meek Shall Inherit Nothing. And Cyborg. And also, I could not find any evidence of this being played elsewhere, but I think this is the first and only performance during the Halloween show of Go Cry on Somebody Else's Shoulder, which would go into the Little Rubber Girl that was released on Volume 4. So that's pretty interesting, I think. So you get that. Idiot Bastard Son was played at one point in the Halloween run. But yeah, so that's what this show is. You get, a pretty standard set list that kind of deviated towards the sort of second third of the show. Excellent guitar solos, some absolutely amazing improvisation. The shows where Shankar appears in, I think the very first show that Shankar played, El Shankar, who was a violinist, was September 7th, and there's a Pound for a Brown that goes into the Deathless Horsey that has solos, and then there's just a monster Conehead at that show. So El Shankar kind of mixes things up. Once Patrick O'Hearn joins the band, the Pound for a Browns just kind of go to another level because you get that Patrick O'Hearn brings sort of a groove and a just like a, you just want to like, he makes you want to move in a way that I don't think the other bass players that Frank ever had did. And I think he adds a different sort of funk element, kind of a smooth funk element to some of these jams. Perfect example of that is the You Can't Do That on Stage 4, Pound for a Brown, the solos, just what O'Hearn brings to Frank's music, I think is a perfect example on there. Other things that were on here, again, Idiot Bastard Son popped up once. Warren Cucurullu tells a story during the Halloween show, sort of a crying game-ish type thing. Spoiler alert, sorry. Packard Goose. Let's see what else. Stinkfoot got a performance on Halloween. I think I like Stinkfoot better. I was also listening to a show recently from 73 show, maybe. I don't know. I can't remember where it was. But Stinkfoot just oh no, it was an 82 show, and Stinkfoot just popped up right in the middle of a show. Just like it wasn't an opening number. There was no Poodle lecture following it. That for the win. But Stinkfoot in the middle of a set, I wish Frank had done that more often. I wish Frank had, it usually was a song that opened a show. And that when it returned in 88, it was opening the shows. I think it really, really works as just a middle of the set random song with a guitar solo. And I kind of wish Frank had done that more. Yeah, Suicide Chump gets a monster performance at one point in October, one of the Halloween shows. Take Your Clothes Off When You Dance, instrumental version. Hear that on Volume 6. And apparently Titties and Beer pops up on a set list, a tape I do not have. Apparently that was performed once, and Denny played the role of the devil, which is interesting because the following tour it popped up a couple more times. And Warren, who had then joined the band, played the role of the devil. Denny no longer got that position. We got a random Uncle Meat a couple times, which is pretty awesome. And Yo Mamas, and as I've said, the Yo Mamas are great, but I do think no Yo Mamas compared to the Winter 78 Yo Mamas, just because of that sort of the natural sort of relationship or the tension that O'Hearn and Bozio bring as bass and drum. I think they have this sort of tension building style that no other Frank rhythmic duo sort of had, and Yo Mama benefited immensely from that. So yeah, shows you should check out almost anything from October. The closer you get to Halloween, the better they get, but you almost cannot go wrong with an October show. The very first show of the tour, August 26th, wanted by a Duck Tony, is actually surprisingly good. And though I think generally most Frank tours, especially when there's like a new rhythm section, get better as they progress. This one definitely gets better as they progress, but it definitely wasn't bad early on. The shows were a little more inconsistent, but even right off on that first show, you can feel like this band is clicking and Frank's feeling the rhythm section, and things are going to be fantastic. Unfortunately, they didn't get fantastic or quicker, but this band definitely kind of had gelled pretty early. The September 7th show with El Shankar, the late show on, all right, Bob. The late show on September 17th, Franks announces that he's going to mix up the set list and sort of pretty much flips the first and second half. You still get that run of shows from Dance a Fool On, but it occurs at the end of the show. So after the opening solo, they mix up the set list, and it works. It works really, really well. And what does Frank play the first time out? Bamboozled by Love. And it actually works really well and sounds pretty good. And it is interesting because in the following tour in 79, there would be a show where Frank would also sort of early in the tour, Frank would mix up the set list. And what song does he throw right off the bat when it usually didn't occur there? Bamboozled by Love. So yeah, I say I don't like that song, and I don't like that song, but there are a couple instances where it works really, really well, really, really well because of where it is placed in the set list as the first song, surprisingly. So interesting. And then again, anything in October. Both October 13th shows, I think both of those are available on YouTube. Excellent shows. Both shows on the 15th, though I think the early show is not quite as complete as the late show, but those are both great shows. And then anything you can find from October, just fantastic. I know there are shows people think I should have mentioned, so put them in the comments. I know you will. Ow, that was loud, right? Anyways, that's about it. Just talking a lot about this tour, rambling, but it's a really, really fantastic tour. And I think one of the releases we can definitely look forward to from the Zappa Family Trust is Halloween 78, because you can't do a series of Halloween releases if you're not going to release 78, unless from the beginning you tell us we're not going to release 78 because those tapes don't exist. But we know those tapes don't exist because Frank has released so much from them. So when that release comes out, you need to get it because it's probably going to be the best thing ever. Ever. All right. That's it. I'm done talking. Let me know your thoughts on this tour, what I missed, what I got wrong, all that stuff. I still feel like I haven't given it its justice, but it's absolutely amazing and aggressive and a beast. All right, peace. Take care, y'all. Stay warm. Sun is coming up. Bye.